Right. So,
Hello.
hello, Louise,
How are
Cosmic
you?
Owl, astrologer, British astrologer in Utah.
Yes, with my owl mug. Oh,
Wow.
can't see it. There we go. There's my owl.
I mean, it has to be said, a British astrologer in Utah.
I know it's very weird, but Utah's weird. So
Well, it wasn't the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking the most unlikely things to be able to say. But yeah, hey, there's British astrologers everywhere in the world, but and Utah is every state in America has its own signature.
mm, yes.
Some of them are seen as liberal, some are seen as conservative, others are seen as forward looking, others are seen as crazy.
Hmm.
And Utah has its own signature.
It certainly does.
I think we'll stop there while we both still not going to get sued or something. Yeah.
Let's just
Uh,
say it's taken me the 15 years I've lived here to get used to it.
you've
So
lived there 15 years. Right.
yeah,
Well, in those 15 years, I can assure you that British politics has got crazier.
yeah. Well, hasn't it everywhere? So
Well, hasn't it everywhere? And that's part of what we're going to be talking about
mhm.
because, well, just before we get into the big picture, there's that big now that we're through the Mars Uranus conjunction,
Hmm.
and now that we're through that crazy full moon of a few days ago,
Only 2 days.
um, and I was up at 5 a.m. this morning to see Saturn occulted by the moon.
Yeah,
That was
and I think Neptune, I mean, you won't see this too, but I think Neptune is as well.
no,
So,
yeah. Neptune's going to graze.
yeah,
It's going to disappear behind the moon for a couple of minutes. It's just going to graze the surface. That's in about, I don't know, 8 hours from now.
yeah.
And then the moon, of course, will move into 0 degrees of Aries and a whole new fresh start.
Oh,
But I'm also looking at that one remaining really big thing that's coming up later this year, that Mars Pluto opposition on the 4th, 5th of November.
yeah.
And the from my UK based perspective, it really does seem as if there's a big change in the dynamic in the American political world in this
Oh,
last 6 weeks.
just paradigm shift completely.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, and I believe that Donald Trump is now the eldest candidate ever to stand for election.
he is. He
Wow.
is. I know. And well, if I were to, well, I'm not making a definitive prediction, but I intuitively, because I'm fairly involved in politics as well as the astrology, I always felt the Dems were going to win in November. Even with Biden, but you were right that Biden's not going to be on the ticket, and
I
and I
still
think
think that Trump.
I don't think you will either, actually. But I think the Dems are just gonna it's gonna be a big win personally. But we still got to go out and vote.
Yeah. If you don't vote, don't complain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But then we got the big one coming up.
Yeah.
I did a video yesterday, which I've yet to release. Well, I've released it today for my membership only, and I'm not going to put it out to the world for another week or so. Um, I'm calling it. I know I'm stealing this term from the World Bank and Prince Charles, but I'm calling it the Great Reset
Hmm.
because
It.
that's exactly what it is. It's I'm very good at finding sometimes the right words to convey the maximum importance without going over the top.
Yeah.
And I feel that the time we're heading into now is the single most concentrated and compressed period of change in human history.
I I totally agree. I've said it on my Substack blog. I write on Substack. And I keep saying it, and I'm like it really is to use a Bernie Sanders term because I'm a Bernie Sanders kind of Democrat here in the States. He always says it's unprecedented. He keeps saying unprecedented, and it is. The astrology is unprecedented. It's just um, astounding to me.
Well, there's quite a lot of individual separate factors involved.
There is.
Shall we have a look? Shall we have a look at them?
Yes. Yeah.
We know that all the four outer planets, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are all going to move from feminine into masculine signs,
Hmm.
um, all within a year or so of each other.
Forming
And
a
that in itself,
mini, forming a mini grand trine with each other or speaking to each other.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And that in itself is unprecedented because we've never had a time like this in astrological history. Or if there has been a time, it hasn't happened for something like 8,500 years. And then, of course, we didn't know of the existence of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So their archetypes weren't in the consciousness.
Exactly. And I would add in, I know you don't really use them, but and I don't think we need to in some ways, but I think it adds to it to say that some of these newly discovered dwarf planets that are right out there have also just shifted signs. Haumea is in this decade-long square with Pluto in Scorpio at 0 Scorpio, and or around those degrees. And then Sedna, who is in Gemini at 0 degrees, and that's got an over an 11,000 year orbit. So it's like
You know what? Sometimes I have to be honest, because of the length of their outer orbits,
Mm.
I find it difficult to take their influence seriously when using them in a natal chart.
Oh, I usually take them out of natal charts. They're not, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I kind of equate it to when people who talk to me about, oh, but I've got Saturn squaring my Uranus. I'm
Mhm.
thinking, yeah, so's everyone else born within 20 years each side of you.
Exactly.
And I also deal with a lot of people who are into hypothetical or esoteric astrology,
Mm.
and they go on about dark moon Lilith and
Yeah,
stuff like this, which doesn't exist.
yeah.
You know, it's a hypothetical.
Hmm.
Someone made it up. Yet so many people swear by it, and I'm thinking, you're not doing astrology any favors here.
Mm. I don't
It,
know.
it's not a rock in, it's not a lump in rock in space.
No, it's not. No, but we use nodes, and they're kind of waves and particles too. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but the nodes
I don't
are a
use
junction.
moon this, so just so you know. But I
No, the nodes are a case on their own because they are the constantly moving in a regular cycle junction point of the sun and the moon's orbit.
they are. Yeah.
So there's a case for that.
Yeah.
But when you get things like Vulcan and Dark Moon Lilith, and I'm like, oh no. I mean, the asteroid Lilith
Oh,
has a,
I love
oh
asteroids.
yeah,
And she was
oh
involved
yeah, me too.
in this Grand Cross on the full moon, of course. She was opposing Uranus on the full moon. So
And
I call her the talk to the hand Lilith.
what Lilith?
Asteroid Lilith, because it looks like a hand. I go,
Yeah,
he's talk to
yeah,
the
yeah, 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 yeah.
talk to the hand.
I mean, I love Demetrius George's way of translating this. He deals with the anger of the suppressed feminine,
Hmm.
but also the asteroid of conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a lovely way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, I was doing a lot of teaching yesterday or videos in readiness for a new teaching launch, and I had about 10 minutes to fill. So I did an impromptu session on a basic user's guide to Greek mythology
Oh,
and things around the development of Uranus and Gaia into the Titans and then into the Olympians and the Titanomancy and everyone cutting bits off of each other's body and it got quite gory and quite gruesome, but it was something that is fascinating to watch.
mm,
But
It is.
fascinating to realize that these archetypes have formed our astrology for thousands of years.
I know. Don't you think it's
And
time?
now we've got all these asteroids.
Don't you think it's a bit kind of time we kind of rewrote some of those myths? So they were kind of written from a very cultural
I
perspective.
think I think that's already happening.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it is.
the,
Yeah, it is.
much of the Greek mythology, as represented in the Western world, is translated by Robert Graves,
Yeah,
who's rapidly becoming discredited, at least in my eyes,
yeah,
because he was a misogynist and he was quite contemptuous of many women in his life.
it was.
And he wrote it from his, he translated it from his perspective. There's much more modern translations of the Greek myths now,
Yeah,
suggesting, for example, that Persephone wasn't abducted by Pluto.
yeah.
Instead, Pluto rescued his sister or his cousin from her domineering mother.
I, yeah, I use that one. And shall I tell you what's happening on December the 7th this year? Because I don't know if you've noticed. Ceres, who is now a dwarf planet. By the way, I also heard that the astronomers are thinking of reclassifying things again, but we'll deal with that again.
Listen,
I know.
listen.
Ceres, Venus, and Pluto are all going to be at zero Aquarius on December the 7th, by the way. And I see those three as the Demeter, Persephone, Hades myth. So there you go.
I was in Granada recently doing some work on the Alhambra Palace,
Mm,
and when the Christians regained Granada from the Muslims around about the 1300s, they superimposed a lot of their architecture on the Alhambra,
mm,
and over the Gate of Justice, which is one of the most holy gates in Spain, they
mm.
superimposed the idea of the Hand of Fatima.
Oh,
And when you say to me about Venus, Ceres, Pluto coming together, Fatima just springs to mind,
mm.
and particular. Don't be surprised if on that day there's some type of announcement concerning global food production or the way we nurture ourselves through digestion and food,
Yeah.
because Ceres is very much connected with nutrition and
Oh,
digestion.
she is. But she's also emotional needs and
Oh yes, nurturing in all of its
all that.
ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you put that with
And it's
Venus and
also
Pluto.
that's also around the date that the Electoral College should certify the election here in the States. So isn't that interesting? I don't know the exact date they're going to do that yet. So, but isn't that interesting?
Interesting. Well, I shall watch that date.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shall look at that one.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Right.
Yeah.
If I see a video, if I do a video on that, I shall
That's yeah.
mention your name in it.
And
Um,
I also looked back in history and found the last time the three were together again. And I can't remember the exact date, but it was actually not that long after Uranus and Ceres were discovered, because of course she was the first asteroid, even though she's a dwarf planet now. And they last all three met at zero Aries, not long after those.
ah, because of course Ceres is the only one of the asteroid belt that is big enough to be round.
And she has water in it. She's very planet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And all the others are potato shaped, but Ceres is round, planet shaped.
And she fits Bode's law, by the way. That empty spot in Bode's law that's been thrown out and discredited. So there you go.
But this let's get back to the
Yes.
subject in hand. We've got Pluto moving into Aquarius, Uranus moving into Gemini, Saturn, Neptune moving into Aries.
Hmm.
With regard to the movements, I noticed that Pluto's now going to move into Aquarius at the end of this year, finally for the first for permanently.
That's
But
November
Saturn,
19th, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus will all move into their new signs next year, but
Hmm.
then retrograde back.
Yeah. So it
So
finishes.
it's going to be like a trial run.
Yeah.
But I note that there's two particular dates there's three particular months that jump to me. One is February 26,
Mm,
which is the actual time of the Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries.
hmm.
One is July 2026, when within the space of 2 weeks, you've got Neptune sextile Pluto, Uranus sextile Neptune, and Uranus trine Pluto.
Yeah.
And those same aspects are repeated again within 2 weeks of each other in June 27.
Yep.
And after June 27, I've looked forward, and the only big thing that's coming up over the next 25 to 30 years is a year-long Uranus opposite Pluto.
Yeah.
But that won't be for another 15 to 20 years after this lineup.
And I
So
look
this line,
and I looked ahead, for because Pluto and Capricorn years have been quite hellish, really, because of the aspects that Pluto made, not because of Pluto, really, I think. And Pluto doesn't really make any apart from, that one way ahead. So yeah, there's really nothing like we've had over the this period.
I'm quite looking forward to Pluto in Aquarius.
I am.
I wasn't looking forward to Pluto in Capricorn at all.
Mm,
And I remember when it moved into Scorpio along with Saturn, they moved together. That was a bit weird.
yeah.
Um, and I remember when it moved out of Scorpio, I was really delighted to see it move into Sagittarius. It's funny how whenever a big planet moves into a fresh sign, there's lots of hope, quickly followed by, oh yeah, right, oh, all right then.
Yeah, but
You know,
if anybody had looked ahead to all the aspects that Pluto made during Pluto and Capricorn years, yeah, I mean, it coincided with our move to Utah, which was interesting. So,
and of course, Jupiter, Saturn,
yeah,
conjunct Pluto,
and
that's the
I live on my
harbinger of COVID.
and I live on my Saturn line here too, so
Ha!
it's been a tough journey here. So I'm really enjoying Pluto in Aquarius. So yeah. But I agree, and it's Pluto in Aquarius just has this whole different vibe, and a total different look at Pluto as well. I think because Pluto in Capricorn years of a lot of astrologers really fear Pluto now because of that. I don't because I've had Pluto go over everything in my chart. I've had all kinds of Pluto aspects, and they've actually been mostly rewarding ultimately. So
Whenever I've I love these arguments I have with scientists and astronomers about Pluto because I can show I've got tens of thousands of statistics, 5,000 people who swear blind at how Pluto affected them.
oh.
And yet the astronomers and the scientists will go, no, it doesn't work.
Oh,
I'm
they're
going,
they are big transits, but I don't always see them as awful either now. They
oh
can be
God, no.
exactly, they're pretty rewarding, especially if you work kind of
I
work.
can't, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I had Pluto opposite my sun, so I'm a Cancerian,
Mm.
I used that time to go through some really difficult life experiences involving a lot of facial reconstruction,
Oh,
lots of surgery on the face,
wow.
and I wrote my book on Pluto.
Yeah.
So to me, that was a positive way of using its energy
Yeah.
as opposed to letting it trash me.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's an
Um,
interesting thought, actually, because I'm not going to go on about it too much, but Ceres, going back to her, is retrograding back to 7 degrees of Capricorn. And
mhm,
she's so far out of bounds right now, by the way.
mm.
Never seen her so far out of bounds, but I've started a book on series that kind of got sidelined, and I've been feeling the pull back to writing that again because she's stationing direct on my Saturn. So there you go. This is how these planets work sometimes.
I do. I do. To me, Pluto in Aquarius is going to, I think one of the side effects is it is going to see a massive decrease in national borders.
I think so.
And I also think it's going to be bringing people together in a way that's no longer sort of determined by nationality or religion
I hope so.
or color.
Oh, please.
You know, it's
I mean,
75%.
I feel
Carry
that.
on.
I feel the same,
Mm,
that positive shift, but then
mm.
am I just being an idealist here? But if two of us are feeling it, then,
75% of the population of this planet are under 30.
yeah. Yep.
We've got to trust the youth.
And I have two of them, my daughters. So, yeah. And
Um,
they're very different to us. So, thankfully.
and I love the idea of Uranus moving into Gemini. That is just so exciting.
Well, don't you think there again, you all I'm in a couple of astrology groups, mundane ones on Facebook, and they're all going, there was war last time Uranus is in Gemini. I'm like, can't you look at the whole picture, the big picture, all the planets together, working together, you know?
You also have to take into account the nature of the astrologer doing the reading, because there's a lot of astrologers out there at the moment talking about war,
Yeah,
and they are not doing any of us a favor.
no, they're not.
They're spreading fear.
Hey, oh, you speak my language there, Steve. Yeah,
Uh, We're heading into a 2 year long trine from Uranus to Pluto.
yeah. And
I can see.
and
Oh,
that's the opening trine from the conjunction in the 60s, isn't it?
it
So
is. Yes. Yes. That's going to particularly affect those people born over 63 to 67.
which is Harris and Walls, the candidates in the US.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I see it as a rapid escalation in soft technology.
Oh, I do. I can even see, a big clean energy discovery coming out. I felt that
At
for a
least,
long time, at least. Yeah. Like one of
at
those
least.
limitless clean energy discoveries. Yeah.
I would expect some type of quick breakthrough in stuff around fission,
Yes. Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
And the idea of actually harnessing, putting up some type of receptor or sail wave in space to harness the sun's energy and beam it back down, something like this.
Something.
But even with that's more of a hard technology. With the soft technology, I'm looking at the idea of individual avatars,
Yeah. Hmm.
the
Mm.
development of hologram. It's not with the nature of Gemini being multi. Let's be polite and call it diverse, right?
My
Um,
Gemini moon appreciates you calling it diverse.
um, right. My Sagittarius moon is not subtle or tactful. Uh, the idea of having avatars, holograms, finding ways to refocus our time and energy seems to be on the table, as does the idea of the interface between humanity and the machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's coming.
Oh, it is coming. And I know a lot of people fear it, but I think we're learning how to work with it already, with
We already have people who are implanted with chips in their brain who can think how to get their legs moving again after 30 years of immobility.
and that's a good thing. I'd rather
That's
rather Elon Musk not have control of those chips, but that's another matter. But I kind of think all those people are gonna kind of um
they're the dinosaurs.
they are, yeah.
They're the dinosaurs. They're not for long for existence now.
Now all the oligarchs and the
No, no. This is the death gasp of the old.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, this is Pluto and Capricorn's final days.
yeah.
To me, though, the concern here is the Saturn Neptune conjunction.
Mm, but they're in zero.
Now, we do have a lot of history of the cycles of Saturn Neptune conjunctions and oppositions.
Yeah,
We know what's happened in the last 150 years whenever Saturn or and Neptune have been conjunct or opposite. There's always been something to do with the rise or fall of communism.
yeah.
Berlin Wall goes up, Berlin Wall comes down, Bolshevik Revolution, Marx Engels Manifesto,
Mm,
all written on Saturn, all done on Saturn Neptune conjunctions or oppositions. And to have a Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries is just like, whoa.
Do you wonder though, because it's in this ongoing grand or mini grand trine with Uranus and Pluto, that this one might be different?
Um, this
I,
is the
I
this is
kind
the
of
ameliorating factor. Yeah,
I kind of have a feeling that some very new some a system that we've never had before is going to come out.
I concur. On the one hand, with Neptune sextile Uranus revolutionizing the imagination,
Hmm. Yeah.
and Neptune sextile Pluto again transforming the ideas of the future.
Hmm.
And with with Uranus trine Pluto, revolutionizing the use of psychology and opening up new neural pathways.
Hmm. Yeah.
All of this is great.
Yeah.
And with Saturn sextiling Pluto, we've got the opportunity to bring structure into the way we use psychology in the world.
Yeah.
And with Saturn sextile Uranus, you can, on the one hand, bring structure into the chaos, but also revolutionize limitations and boundaries.
Yeah.
So all of this is great.
Hmm.
But Saturn conjunct Neptune, that worries me because I see it as the last, ultimately vain attempt, but big attempt of the old structures to maintain some type of control, possibly through, because of Neptune's connection with environmentalism, some type of climate for chaos, which makes what we're going through so far look crazy.
That is a possibility, I have to say. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
and it could spread quite quickly um with those aspects too. But I think there's always a shadow, you know.
Well, always, always. But the fact that, as I'm fond of saying, you're in your mid 50s.
No, I just look good. I'm 64. I was born
Oh,
December.
so we're almost. Well, I'm 69, so we're almost the same generation.
Yeah,
Um, when we were kids, there was only 2 billion, 2.2 billion, and now there's eight.
yes.
When we were kids, technology was a Bakelite telephone on a wall with a ring dial, and now we're streaming halfway across the world.
I know.
And when we were kids, spirituality meant going to Sunday school.
You did.
Now it's just like this is one of my favorite topics. I've got to be in my bonnet about this. It's the acceleration of evolution,
Oh, definitely is. Definitely.
and it's not linear. It's not a straight line. It's exponential,
Yeah,
and we're almost at prime vertical.
yeah,
And the next few years, I think, do represent the breakdown or breakthrough,
yeah.
some type of nexus point.
Oh,
And it's almost like humanity's training is at an end.
yeah,
We're now going to graduate or collapse.
yeah. And we do have free will.
And
We work with it, I think, to a degree. Yeah.
well, one thing's for sure, it's a fascinating time to be alive.
Oh, isn't it? I'm like, God, I hope I live long enough to see at least like how it's starting to shake out.
We will, we will, we will.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
wouldn't have volunteered. Yeah, I kind of feel we volunteered for this.
I think so. Yeah,
And as astrologers, it's our duty to not only observe and record, but also to give another perspective.
yeah. To say it's happening. Don't be afraid as well. Work with it rather than fight the change. And I think the more people resist the change, the more they'll struggle with it. So that's why I try.
I agree. I think the only ones who are going to suffer out of all this are the ones who are naturally scared or who want to maintain the illusion of control over other people or themselves.
Yeah,
The idea of just dancing with it and flowing with it is it's got to work.
yeah. It has to. Yeah,
It's even made me rethink. I mean, the older I get, the more mortality begins to sort of become a thing in my life. But it's made me rethink the whole nature of death.
yeah.
And increasingly, I'm seeing it as just a transition of consciousness
Oh, I think so.
rather than the ending of a soul path or something like that.
Yeah, I think,
But
but I'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm
yeah,
also I'm also a trained shamanic practitioner. I don't do healings and things, but I have aided somebody in their death, shamanically and helped them do I did the psychopomp work, and she definitely could see the other side as she was transitioning. There was definitely something there.
I think you hit on something really important there. I get really angry when people say to me, I'm a healer. And I think, no, you're not.
Yeah,
No, there are no healers as such. There may have been once
yeah,
before we had the terminology.
yeah,
But if you heal people, they just get addicted to you.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas if you catalyze them and empower them to become who they really are, they become independent and more empowered.
exactly. Yeah,
And I see myself as a catalyst
me too.
for others.
Yeah. I actually use
So
my shamanic work I run a Venus retrograde class every Venus retrograde, clearly, so it's every 19 months. And I use the shamanic work in that to just guide them to do their own journey through the retrograde. And it really is quite profound. So,
that's fascinating because Venus is the planet I understand least of all.
ah,
I love the geometry.
yeah,
I've got so many examples of the pentagonal, pentagrammical patterns of Venus, and I know all about its geometry, but its meaning, it eludes. Venus is exactly conjunct my self node.
ah,
So
there you go.
I just don't relate to it by transit. And it's I wouldn't say it's a mystery, but it's a if I'm derisory, I call it a bit of a non-entity, which is a bit cruel. I just don't see it as a powerful force in my chart. Other people
Well,
totally disagree with that.
in my chart,
Fine.
she's a degree from my midheaven and a degree from Neptune. So the three are in um, within 2 degrees. And so she's my most elevated planet. And also my prenatal Venus star point, which is when Venus and the Sun met when I was in the womb, is conjunct my Pluto. So there you go.
Well, Venus obviously works for you. Yeah. I've always considered myself Saturn's boy.
Mm,
Although more recently I'm becoming Pluto's boy.
yeah.
Um, I have Mercury exactly on my Gemini midheaven.
Ah,
So it's easy for me to talk,
yeah. 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 Yeah.
but it's only recently that I've realized that words are cheap. It's not so much about conveying, it's not about conveying information.
Yeah.
It's about, it's about getting meaning across. Words are just
A
a
vehicle.
system of communication that invoke meaning to other people. And if
Exactly.
other people can draw meaning from your communication, then they're going to value it a lot more than just simple hearing, listening, or learning.
Hmm.
Meaning is such a big word.
And astrology is literally means
Ah,
the language of the stars. So,
astrologos.
yeah, so we're here to try and convey the meaning of that. And I think to do that, you have to really kind of feel into it, not just use the words you learnt in a book. So, anyway,
Yes.
yeah.
I did go for a week once upon a time when I realized that I talked too much. I went for a week where I just shut up for a week and just used mime.
Oh.
It was so painful.
I don't know if I can.
No, I'm never doing that again. It was an interesting experiment.
Well, my
And of
Gemini.
course, one or two of my friends really had it in for me at that
Oh,
time.
I
They
bet
did everything they could to make me talk.
my
I
Gemini
hate.
moon opposes Jupiter, so it's yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but coming back to the present time, I mean, for the last 30 years, I've been looking at ephemeris and thinking, oh, look at that, 2025, 6, 7.
Yeah,
And now it's on our doorstep.
I know it really is. And then as well, combined with that, and I looked at this with somebody else on my YouTube yesterday. If we think back to when Pluto went into Capricorn and all the kind of chaos and transition really started, At the same time, by precession, Regulus moved out of Leo into Virgo and is sitting at 0 Virgo, so is also going to aspect all those planets. And I kind of think that's significant as well. So, all of these things add to it, really. Because fixed stars from our perspective are in a sign for 2,160 years. So we're
Yes.
we're really moving out of that Leo kind of all about me, you know, energy. Hmm.
Yes, I was explaining to someone, trying my best to explain to someone the other day the difference between sidereal tropical, between Western and Vedic. And I was talking about the 2,160 year cycle because the not only is the Earth revolving around the sun, but the sun is revolving around the center of the galaxy.
Hmm.
So 2,160 years ago, of course, the constellations aligned with the zodiacal patterns. But in that last 2,160 years, the sun has moved
Yeah.
around the galaxy a bit. So the perception is different now.
And our galaxy is moving around
Yes.
well. So, you know,
Well, if you don't have movement, if you don't have change,
yeah,
this is why I love Uranus so much. If you don't change, it leads to entropy and decay,
yeah, I think so.
and
Yeah.
change is essential.
And
Um,
it's bigger than, the age of Aquarius, which everybody, but it is that as well, but I kind of feel like the age of Aquarius, this move into it started with the discovery of Uranus. But I don't think we just move in on a day, you know.
having, I agree with you. However,
Hmm.
I would suggest that the movement of the planets over the next couple of years, all into masculine signs, does indicate a bigger shift than we've ever experienced before.
Oh,
So I would suggest that this is a pivotal time in the transition
mm.
into Aquarius
Oh,
from Pisces.
oh, absolutely. But I think it kind of seeded it, back then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Definitely.
now we're in this big, just
Oh,
amazing thing.
this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. And
I can't, I don't
at
know.
the end,
I don't know how astronomers are going to keep up. I kind of laugh at them.
I almost feel sorry for them. Almost,
Almost. Yeah.
almost. Um, but recently, when I say recently, I mean just within this last year and a half, it seems like the universe has kind of not so much grabbed me or directed me,
Mm,
but I've become a lot more open to the idea of the holistic or sentient universe.
mhm. Me too.
And one of my people who I did the MA with long ago, 25 years ago, Gary Phillipson, he's recently written a fantastic paper on panpsychism
Yeah.
about how the universe has a form of consciousness.
Hmm.
And he's done it from a very academic perspective. It's a great paper. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I think you would love it.
Oh, I would.
Um,
There's also a book you would probably like. It's called just The Flip. It's actually a fairly short book. It's written by, actually, he's a professor of religious studies, but he's studied, all kinds of things. And he said even scientists are flipping to realize as well that, there's more than just this empirical kind of evidence. And he calls it the flip. And his name is Jeffrey Kripal, Kripal. I think you'd enjoy that book too. It's a really good book. I read it 3 times.
must introduce him to that nice Mr. Dawkins.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
who I suspect is actually a convert himself. He just can't bring himself to admit it.
exactly.
Um, anyway,
Well,
you just got to wish them
they
all
all,
the best and send them love and
yeah,
let
and
them get on with it.
they dealt with what they knew with at the time, which is,
Yes, yes, they have their uses.
yeah, yeah.
One of the things that recently, when I realised that I've now seen enough geometric studies made of the positions and the orbital rotations of the planets in the sky. It's made me realise that um, the position, the distance from each planet from the sun, their orbital rotational periods, and the patterns they make are so perfect, 99% perfect in every single case, plus that the chances of this being a random thing is zero.
Not random at
There
all.
is, there is
A con
pattern recognition to me is at the core of astrology.
Yeah, oh, totally, totally. That's why when I look at a chart now, I don't, I dropped the books long ago. Of course, I had to learn from the books, but now I just let the chart kind of move a bit in. I kind of look at it
That's
with a bit of,
that's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
When I look at a chart, the first thing I do is kind of unfocus my eyes,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
and I'm fond of saying that a good astrologer can do a horoscope reading without the wheels of the signs or the houses, just
Oh,
with the aspect pattern.
oh, you could easily. Yeah.
And because to me, I've often liked it to the planets are the ingredients of the cake,
Yeah.
and the aspects are the way the ingredients mix up, and they're the body of the cake.
Yeah.
But the signs are like the icing and the marzipan around the edge of the cake,
Mhm.
and the houses are the cardboard box and the plastic wrapping and the price tag. And uh, but the core of a cake is always the aspects in a chart to me, always.
Always, always. Yeah.
I'm so pleased you agree because many astrologers disagree with that.
Well, I do think it's going to change. And I shouldn't sneer because, people are on their path where they're at. But I do see more people kind of seeing it from our perspective now as we move into what I would call this more quantum thing. I know you did a talk with Rick Levine, and his big focus really is on aspects, isn't it? And the minor aspects even. So yeah.
Yeah. And to me, quantum, the idea of everything being connected with everything else.
Mhm.
When on the rare occasion I can actually wrap my tiny little brain around that concept,
Yeah.
it really, really charges my batteries up and it gives me so much hope for the future.
Oh, it does.
But then it goes again. You just have to sort of remember that feeling till you can reinvent it and re-image it.
Because
But
it's so much to take in. It's just like,
yes, it's yes.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then you
it
have to
requires.
come back and live in your
But
body.
isn't this indicative of what's coming for us? Because I think that the single biggest influence of all of these impending changes is um, expansion of consciousness.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. All these planetary discoveries and all the aspects and the cycles, everything's expanding totally. Yeah. And yeah,
We only use
you don't have to use all the asteroids and things at all. And I don't use most of them in natal readings. I use them if they speak to me, if the aspect,
yes,
if an asteroid's really strong in somebody's chart, I might use it. But and you can't, it's too much to use if you're just doing it.
yeah, it is. The only asteroid I use all the time is Ceres, and that's not really an asteroid.
Exactly. I always use
Um,
it. Yeah.
mm, mm.
Mm. But when we're looking
But
at
it does.
what we're talking about, yeah, you kind of can bring more and more stuff in, and it just gets more and more mind blowing, to be honest. So,
And we only use 23% of our brain when we're awake and something like 28% when we're asleep. And it's a vastly untapped reservoir of like hard drive waiting to be filled.
no,
So I
it's
really like an upgrade in consciousness.
mm,
And I'm fond of saying to my clients that it's not an upgrade like Windows 10 to Windows 11.
oh,
It's an upgrade like Windows 3 to the latest Mac. The whole operating system's being upgraded.
exactly. Yeah, it's yeah.
And I don't know who it was who said, "May you live in interesting times," but they've got a lot to answer for.
I find it
So,
exciting though. I find I dream these things now.
yes,
Yeah. My
yes, I find myself dreaming in symbols more and more.
Yeah, my Venus retrograde class came to me in a dream, and I didn't even really understand the Venus cycle fully then. And I just woke up and I was like, okay, you this class class is going to really help people. And so I ran it and I've done it 5 times now. I'm about to do my sixth. And I've studied and worked more deeply with Venus. And because Venus really is the big sister of Earth, it actually is very powerful. I can.
Mm. Well, I see Venus and Mars are like the girdle planets, aren't they?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's so much developing now in terms of the way we see our place, not just on the Earth's surface and in our communities, but in the bigger picture, the larger picture.
there is. Yeah, yeah,
And it occurs to me that if, as I suspect, we suddenly go for a big surge, acceleration in consciousness by opening up our brain power to something like another 7 or 8% over the period of just a few years, which could easily happen in the next few years,
oh,
then all
absolutely.
of a sudden our perception of the world is going to become much more enhanced,
Hmm.
and our ability to be able to spot the BS and to naturally recognize when someone harbors ill intent or malignancy or anything like that is going to become much stronger. But much bigger than all of that, it also suggests to me that we may become aware of other forms of sentience, probably indigenous to this planet,
Yeah,
but are currently outside of our range of perception.
like
Because,
I think it's already happening with people, even with things like mycelium. People are realizing that this whole network of mycelium under the
oh, you're
earth,
talking my language now.
and that
Yeah.
the the actual DNA of mushrooms is very similar in some respects to human.
You're familiar with Rupert Sheldrake?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you familiar with his son, Merlin?
No, I will go and look it.
Merlin Sheldrake. Stay there. Stay there.
Yeah.
Just 2 seconds. Um,
To anybody watching the recording, I knew that we'd go off and
Merlin Sheldrake. How make our worlds, change our minds, shape our futures. How fungi does this. Entangled life. It's all about the mycelium networks.
yeah,
And it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
yeah,
The Sheldrake family are just awesome.
yeah.
I mean, I still take psilocybin
No, yeah.
every year. I've done it every year since 1977. I used to take it very large amounts of regularly. And
Mhm.
these days I just do it once a year in minor doses. It's just like in England, we have a thing called an MOT,
Yes.
which is like where you go to get your car tested once a year to make sure it's all working. And I do that with psilocybin once a year, microdosing, but still
I,
enough to
I
give
have
it a tickle.
friends. I have friends that microdose, and I really actually, I might do it again. I've done psilocybin in the past, and I had such magical experiences.
Oh, yeah.
And
I've never known anyone have a bad time.
I think they actually opened me up to seeing astrology this way as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
As you may know, astrology for me is it's a living and
yeah.
it's a passion.
Oh, it's more than just a living.
But
It is a living, but yeah.
I'm also very strongly involved. I've been accepted for a PhD. I've yet to do it, but I've been accepted for a PhD in the field of crop circle studies
Oh, yeah.
because I've been in 800 or 900 different crop circles over the course of my life,
Mm,
and I've got pictures of tens of thousands of them. So
wow.
I do think I know more about them than most.
Mm.
And to me, there's that also speaks to me of absolutely fundamental intelligent life force.
Oh,
And I know that they don't come from ET, alien, outside
no,
of this planet.
not that. No, I know it.
I just know they don't.
I think it's all here. I don't think
Yeah,
there's,
of course it is. It's
yeah,
just different. It's right. It's from the fair folk or the troll or goblin or crop
yeah,
circle maker. It's just outside of our perceptive range. And
yeah.
it's like they're waiting for us to wake up.
Hmm.
In the past, we've said, oh, once we've got space travel, we can join the galactic community. And it's like, hello, the community's here on Earth now, waiting for us to wake up.
Our future's not
Oh,
on.
I'm getting a bit, I'm ranting a bit, but you get my drift.
Oh, our future is not on Mars. Though Elon can go. He can go first.
Yeah, I'll take Donald with him. Yeah. And most of the British politicians as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
No, it's all here. I mean, this is, yeah, at the center, of everything. And, to go back to the mycelium and the shamanic work, I did a workshop with an astrologer here in the US, and her name is Patricia Walsh. You may have heard of her. But anyway,
Patricia Walsh.
yeah. And we did a lot of shamanic journey work on that. And I did a journey into the mycelium network where I was traveling under the earth, and that was into the energy of Taurus, I think it was. So I was actually like swimming in the mycelium network. It was lovely.
I've had similar, except for I was actively talking with what I call what Terence McKenna calls the machine elves.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know, I
yeah.
was laying on with my face in the grass, looking through the grass, all these little green men talking with me and showing me things and so on.
I've had a big
Whatever.
conversation with an ant once as well. Anyway,
Yeah, well,
yeah. But that was
these
under
are
Libin. But you can get a similar thing from shamanic journey work as well if you really do it powerfully.
it's just expanding the boundaries of consciousness.
It is exactly. Yeah.
And this is where astrology gives us such an edge because
Mhm.
it's I describe astrology sometimes as the emerging the lingua franca of the emerging consciousness revolution. It's a language that can be spoken by any nationality, any generation, any culture,
Mhm.
and its capacity to be objective, informative, but also compassionate and love-based
Yes,
gives it an edge over anything else in the world. It is unique.
I totally
And
agree.
it's such a privilege
It really is, and
to work with it.
to bring it down to kind of more the human centered, more and more I kind of I don't know if you're aware of kind of the developments in psychotherapy and psychology of like parts work and things where I see astrology as parts work. It's what's it called? Well, parts work. Somebody calls it something else, but it's saying we've got all these parts in us, and a lot of therapy now actually has you kind of meditating and talking to those parts. And I'm like, well, that's astrology. So
Yeah. Well, of course, the founder of modern psychology
yeah,
happened to be an absolutely brilliant astrologer as well.
yes,
Carl,
yeah,
Carl Jung.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
so I actually, okay, I have the moon in Sagittarius. I'm biased. I can't get outside of my own bias.
Well, I have a Sagittarius stellium, so I'm
Right. But I find myself in a state of both some trepidation, but primarily anticipation,
me too.
hope for the future
Mhm.
in a way that just makes me think that come what may, we're going to make this. We're going to make this breakthrough. We're going to break through that veil.
Yeah,
And it's just a
as a
question,
whole, we are. Yeah,
yes, as a species,
yeah,
yes, as a species, we have to take everyone with us. And some will do it willingly and some will do it kicking and screaming,
and some will.
but it's going to happen.
Yeah. It is. I agree completely, and I also, work a little bit with what you would might call mind magic, but there's another great book by um a guy called Doty, Doty, and he's actually a neuroscientist, so he talks about the brain science of it. And it's manifestation, if you like, but it's not like The Secret where you wake up and there's a red bike on the doorstep because you've dreamt of the red bike. But he said we can use it collectively because our minds are actually part of this system creating what it is. So, yeah,
I love the idea of identity, individuality, self-reflective consciousness. I love being an individual,
yeah,
but I also am a big fan of the hive mind,
yes,
the
exactly.
collective
Yeah,
consciousness.
me too. Hmm.
And I see no reason why both forms of existence should not coexist healthily together, both individually and collectively.
Yeah, I
We're
agree.
not going to lose our identities, but we'll just become more empathic and intuitive.
Yeah, and realize, that we are. I mean, there was a theory going around a little while ago that Pluto in Aquarius would mean we'll all be telepathic. And I don't know if we're actually all going to be fully telepathic, but I think we are moving more towards that connection, definitely.
I would suggest empathic rather than
Yeah,
telepathic.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I wouldn't want people to read my thoughts. They might find out how crazy or kinky or whatever it is I really am.
I don't
But
think.
I'm quite happy to people to be able to read my body language and read my mood
Yes,
and to be able to get the feeling I'm trying to embrace all the time because 95% of the time I know I'm on the right path.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
well,
Yeah.
I must say it's a real pleasure talking with you.
You too. I love where we've
I
gone,
mean,
you know.
I think I think we should make this more of a regular thing, you know.
I'd like to. And after we finish recording, there's something I want to ask you while we're on. So I don't want to say it on the recording.
But we've been talking 58 minutes.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm getting involved in this big docu-series, this documentary that I'm trying to make happen. I've been on it all day,
Yeah.
booking hotels, booking airplanes.
Yeah.
It's really about to manifest over the next 6 months. And I've got an amazing synchronicity happen today, and I'll tell you this afterwards. But yeah, I think we should do this at least every couple of months.
Happy to. Yeah, I love to. Yeah, because
Yeah, because
I
just
love,
to banter,
yeah, I love
you know, it's just
the other astrologers that are seeing it because then we bring in the other
so
bit.
this is one of the things I forgot to say.
Yeah.
I ran a competition once
Hmm.
saying, what's the best collective term for a bunch of astrologers? You know, you get a parliament of rooks, a herd of cows, whatever.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
said, what's the best name for a collection of astrologers? Because when astrologers get together, they love to argue and bitch. They
Oh,
just love it.
I try and stay out of those of who's right and
Well, I quote Groucho. I wouldn't belong to any group that would have me as a member, right?
yeah, yeah.
But the one that won, well, I gave him a copy of one of my books as a reward, was the person who came around and said the best collective term for a group of astrologers is an argument of astrologers.
Oh, it's so true. And that is very relevant to what I'm going to ask you after we stop recording.
Okay, well, let's stop recording and let's agree on air that we'll do this again at some stage in the nearish future this year.
Definitely. Bye, everybody.